Welcome to the Fine Print, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, Caleb Teskey, back at you after kind of a little hiatus here with another great guest. And these sweet "Don't Buy Weed from Cops" t-shirts. If you'd like one, let me know, please. Those are making their way around. Let's do the homework off the top, guys. Had some great guests on. Janet Gray Bernor from the Miss Lindenville Diner back home in Lindenville. Still looking for someone to buy that up. If you guys know anyone that might be interested, please let me know. Our new lieutenant governor, John Rogers, was on the show. I don't want to say it was the fine print bump that got him over the line in a close election, but might have been. My dude, Patrick McNeil from Letterkenny, Rush Rancid, professional wrestler, Ian Oswald out in California at Abstracts, who's doing some fantastic cannabis research. And then, of course, Malcolm McKinnon. Had a really great talk with Malcolm. The book is Pot Shots, The Journey of a High Times Photographer, if you guys didn't catch that one. And then coming up, I was supposed to have Marty Rollins on Tuesday. I've been plugging this book a lot. It's called Flying High, The Great Cannabis Caper, about this big bust down in Georgia that Marty was involved in. And his friend Billy Deacle, who's hopefully going to come on. Due to some personal reasons, I've had to reschedule that, but I'm going to get Marty on as soon as I can here. And then I'm going to have Billy on shortly after. And I think that's all the homework we got. Unless you guys, I don't know if you guys saw the one, but Jade Nectar, Jeff Nordahl out in Cali. That was super good. Really enjoyed that. Or Nate Brown here in Vermont, Green Mountain Gardens. Yeah, that's all I got. So my guest today, this is going to be great, guys. I've been waiting to get this guy on the show for, I don't know, 6-7 months now. Since we first talked. I've been looking for business owners in every state in the country. And I've had some other guests from Illinois, but none of them have owned businesses or have attempted to open businesses. And that's what we got for you today, guys. I'm going to stop wasting time. He's the CEO of canAFarm out in Illinois. Please welcome Talvin White to the show. Talvin, thanks for being here tonight, man.
Man, always good to talk to you, Caleb. How you been?
I've been well. I was hoping before we do anything serious that you might give us a 5-minute life story.
Yeah, my name is Talvin White. I grew up in Gary, Indiana, moved to North Chicago, Illinois, right by Waukegan when I was about maybe in the 3rd grade. My mom and I went to school in North Chicago, graduated from North Chicago High School, went to college at the College of Lake County in Grays Lake, where my mother was the regional coordinator there for all 3 campuses. I think she did that job for about 35 years. Graduated from the College of Lake County with an associate's in art. Longtime advocate of the plant, even before it was legal. Come from a long line of farmers and gardeners. And run my license in 2023, the last round in Illinois, for a retail dispensary license. So I've been pretty much trying to figure out how to get it up and running ever since. But that's about it.
Right. A concise 2-minute life story. For the rest of this, I'm going to put you in the big box. I might solo on you a little bit here. Will you tell us a little bit more? It sounds like you have a passion for growing all types of different things, Talvin. I'd be curious to hear about that, man.
Yeah, man, I do a full garden for my family and at my aunt's house, my mom's house, and my house. Pretty much anything you could think of that's a companion plant or produce that you would eat every day and go to the grocery store and buy. I grow at our homes. Lettuce, cucumbers, tomatoes, onion, garlic, sage, nettle, yarrow, pears. We got cherry trees, blueberries. We do sweet potatoes, and obviously cannabis.
That's awesome. Cherry trees.
Yeah, watermelon, everything.
No shit.
Yeah.
Awesome. So what made you decide to want to get into the cannabis industry, man? Because and I think I've interviewed about 300 people now. It's a tricky business. There's a lot involved with it. So what made you decide to take this path, man?
Well, first of all, when I realized that the lottery was coming out, I was already a medical patient. I've been a medical patient in Illinois since 2016, right after they first initiated the program. Not to mention the fact that I have been arrested for cannabis multiple times in my life. I've been racially profiled for cannabis. Anything that could possibly go bad with cannabis with a youth, it's happened to me. So when they came out with the lottery, I was interested. I knew that I fit the criteria, so I put in and I won. And after that, I was initially thinking about selling it. But then after I started getting all these calls with people wanting to buy it, I realized how valuable it was. And since I already understood a little bit about the industry and the plant, I decided to go ahead and see if I could try my hand at it.
So I got to stop you and ask. You said you've been arrested a couple of times, Talvin. I'd love to hear as much as you care to share about that. I know some of these stories aren't super fun for a lot of people, but as much as you care to share about that, please do.
Well, growing up in North Chicago, it's a predominantly Black community, but back in the 90s, the early 90s and 80s, it was policed by a lot of people that weren't necessarily from the community. So the youth that would be just going to school or going anywhere might be at risk. If the cops decided that you looked like you were a threat, they would harass you. It doesn't matter how old you were. And if they said that you smelled like cannabis or you had something that looked like a leafy substance, you could potentially go to jail or juvenile. So a lot of times when we saw the cops in North Chicago, we just broke. We didn't even wonder what they wanted or anything. We just left. We but that rubs certain cops the wrong way. And if you run on them enough times, when they do catch you, even if you don't have any cannabis on you, you will. And this was pre-camcorder. This was pre-dash footage, any of that. It was their word against yours. So needless to say, growing up where I grew up and my mom was always at work, so I was in the streets. If I'm out there and I look like I look, 9 times out of 10, I was going to get harassed. So I'm not to say I was an angel, but
And you said, maybe some racial profiling going on.
No, not maybe. It's just that's something that happens. A lot of people don't like to talk about it, but it's a good cash cow for cops and has been for 50, 60 plus years. And cops feed the state and the local judicial system. That's how they buy their cars and that's how they build their courthouses. And a lot of people don't really want to get to that ugly truth. They've been doing this in mass. You couldn't even put a number on the amount of billions of dollars they've collected just by repossessing grandmama's house or auntie's car, or back then you didn't even have to test. There was no testing. So if they said you had a leafy green substance on you, it could be oregano. You go into jail. You know what I mean? So
and I wanted to ask you too, before I'm going to tie this into getting the license here, but it sounded like you had like a possession charge that really got you fucked up out there.
I've had multiple possession charges. Like I said before, when I was a youth, I had a lot of run-ins with the cops, and that doesn't sit well with them. It's kind of, back in the day, they used to write a girl's number on the wall. And everybody, that's kind of what they do with you when you get in trouble. It's like, hey, this guy's easy pickings. You see him, you arrest him. So
I had to mute my microphone there for a minute. That's not funny, but you made it sound funny.
Hey, it's no joke, but you gotta laugh about it. It becomes an everyday thing of life for most people, and it's just overlooked as,
Yeah, as you know, and I hate that because it's not as it's some of these charges could really fuck your life up. I have friends up here that have felonies from just having too much weed on them or some little bit of sales, which
the charges are just the beginning, though, Caleb. You have to put into context what happens after the charges come, because if you ever go into a courthouse in some of these suburbs and you look and see what the bail or the bond is for the Black and brown people versus the charges, I mean, some of the bonds are ridiculous, and they know that these people can't pay, and these are not reflected by other races. Like, other races might have the same crime or even a more heinous crime, and their bond will be 50 to 70% less. So,
Yo,
You
that,
do the
that
math on that.
that does seem to be true from what I've looked at, and certainly with the sentencing seems to be harsher for black and brown people from what I've looked at.
Yes, and it's not. I read a statistic a couple years ago that in Illinois, I don't know how it is in other states, but in Illinois, 97% of the cases do not go to trial. They just get pled out because the bonds are so high that you can't get out, and most people will do anything just to get out. They never see a trial. It's a
Yeah,
system for making money, you know.
well, I think a lot of them are banking on people to not have enough money for a lawyer who would just take the public defender and agree to whatever deal that is thrown at them.
Yes, and it's hard to fight a case from inside. It's hard to go to trial from inside. And when you're in there for long enough, if they give you a sweet enough deal, whether you're guilty or not, 8 times out of 10, you're going to take the deal, take the conviction, increase their percentages. You know.
I want to read a couple comments here. This is Syntax swinging by to say hi. Saw nobody's in chat. That's all right. Feel you got busted with a weed pipe that was rusted to the inside of my car truck at 17. Had no idea it was there. Thank God times have changed. Yeah. Thanks for tuning in, Syntax. Yep. Okay. So Talvin, I want to tie this into you moving into the cannabis industry, and some questions about the social equity program. I'm not really sure where to start. I have so many questions here, but maybe you could just tell us sort of how the application process began, and we could lead into the social equity stuff.
Well, my round was far more simplistic than previous rounds. In previous rounds, you have to have a large amount of capital. You need a lawyer to write it because it was so meticulous. But with mine, if it was easy to do, not easy to do, but I was able to do it by myself without an attorney, and the fees were only $250 to enter.
Really?
Yeah, and they gave you a certain amount of time to correct deficiencies. So if you messed up something, they allowed you to correct it. They gave you like a 2 or 3 week window. So after you had your status and you filled out your application, it was just a matter of being submitted into the lottery and then winning an actual ticket. The more checks you check on the box of status, the higher your chances are to win.
So what kind of boxes are we checking here, Talvin?
You check in boxes like what they do is like if you were on food stamps or a member of your family was on link or assistance, if you had Medicaid from the state, if you were living in an area that didn't have a grocery store or was very, very poor, if you lived in an area where the crime rate was higher than average than most, if you were a victim of a violent crime, which was a big status this round, if you had been shot or stabbed, they had a program in Illinois years ago. It's called Victim of a Violent Crime. If you were stabbed or shot, then the state would pay for your medical fees. If you could prove that you participated in that program in the last 15 years, then you got extra points. So those were the things that they were. Some were veteran status, like the previous round relied heavily on veteran status. So that's how you get more boxes per se. Check.
And the one thing I remember that from our first phone call, you said this thing about living in a certain radius of a grocery store, which is something I never thought of. What is the justification behind that rule? Do you know, Talvin?
Well, I can give you an example. I live in North Chicago. We are potentially the second highest populated city in Lake County, and we have no grocery store. I think we had one grocery store there that stayed open for maybe 3 years in the last 30 years. So, and if you want to go to the grocery store, you have to go to Waukegan, or you have to go to Zion, or you have to go to Lake Forest, or any of the surrounding cities, or you have to shop at a convenience store, the liquor store, for your groceries.
The liquor store for groceries.
I mean, yeah, most of the we have multiple town stores that sell, produce. They'll sell chicken. They'll sell a moderate amount of everything, but it's at a higher price and it's less of a selection. It might not be the freshest, but people do what they got to do,
Okay, and you mentioned this lottery sitting here. I'm supposed to like every 10 or 15 minutes, I'm supposed to go back and just do this. Hang on. I'm with Talvin White here from canAFarm Dispensary out in Illinois, guys. You mentioned this lottery system, and I know this is another thing we talked about on the phone, and I told you how I felt about it. You actually had some interesting counterpoints, but I'd really love if you would explain to some of these folks how that works, because in Vermont, we didn't do a lottery system. However, I've seen in states like Connecticut, and obviously in your state, that's how they're doing it. But maybe you could tell everybody the mechanics of that, and then your thoughts on that kind of system, man.
The thoughts were, in a couple years ago in Evanston, they had a program that was called reparations. And it was a lot of hoopla about it. Most people didn't agree with it, but they gave anybody that was arrested in Evanston money back because they allowed dispensaries there and everything was legal. So I feel as though the state didn't like that reparation idea. So instead, they made social equity. They knew that it was impossible to give back all of the billions of dollars that they stole from people for a plant that should have never been illegal. So instead, they gave us this fake opportunity to make millions. Now, the fact of the matter is, most of the people who were really harmed by what they were doing to this plant were Black and brown predominantly. And the people who should have had the first crack when they made it legal and should have been released from prison should have been those same people or the descendants of those people. Period. But that makes a lot of people uncomfortable because the same people who are the tycoons and the millionaires are the same people who were buying into the private prisons and were anti-cannabis and let's lock them up if they smell like it. So it's kind of hard for them to get on board now with sharing the playing field equally.
And so, from what I looked at in Connecticut, right after that whole thing went down, they released some of the numbers, right? And they saw like, okay, one company bought like 20% of the cultivation licenses. Did you guys see anything like that out in Illinois?
Yeah, when medical first happened, that's pretty much what happened the same way, in a more polite way. The people who had the money bought the medical license and they were able to lobby to learn how to get the first recreational license and were allowed to establish brands. And the crumbs go to who.
Crumbs. That's the word I use a lot. Not everybody is on board when I talk about that. And I know Illinois has a very interesting political history, and
to say the least.
Right. And I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on that and how it pertains to the weed industry, because I assume that same politics comes, downhill and it's feeding into the cannabis industry in a lot of the states that I've seen.
Politics is going to be politics, but it'd be hypocritical just to point the finger at one side because it's always two sides to a story. Now, mind you, legislation is a big part of it, and lobbying is a bigger part of it because that's how you get legislation changed. Unfortunately, the people who will go to bat for those who need it the most, they don't have money to buy lobbies to spend money down there in Springfield and days and weeks down there. They just don't have it. So the laws get passed. They're not in their favor. It's just the facts of life. You know what I mean?
Right. And, certainly from what I've seen, the people with the deepest pockets, you can throw some lobbyists in there and have that money to sprinkle around to maybe, amplify your signal a little bit.
Yeah. And honestly, a lot of people don't understand the ramifications behind some of the legislation that's passed. So a lot of people, they don't go to their city hall meetings. A lot of people don't even understand the laws that are being passed in their own municipality, let alone the state.
So, at the end, I'm going to ask you about some of those laws. That's usually my end question, but yeah, I'll get to make a note of that because I always like to ask people, about the legislation and how it's working. And certainly the lottery system was the first step of that. But, and you said you were able to do this whole application without a lawyer, which is something I also ask people because a lot of people have chosen to hire a lawyer. Some of them said the lawyer actually wasn't useful. Some of them said Yeah, we could have saved $3,000 if we didn't pay a lawyer, but you got that done in Illinois, and I'm kind of surprised, honestly, because I felt like that would be one of the trickier states to navigate all of the hoops you got to jump through to get that application done.
If you were talking about last round or the first round, you would be correct. But this round, if you had even a little bit of common sense and intelligence, I feel like you could write it, you could do it. And plus, they gave you the ability to correct any deficiencies or mistakes. So it's not to say that it was super easy, but I was able to do it without paying for an attorney. How can you go into a situation where you may or may not win a license and spend money that you don't have?
Did you say that you got the highest score on one of these?
I got a very high score because I fit pretty much every box that could be checked. Multiple times, mostly.
Cool. So will you also tell us, Talvin, what kind of licenses they're issuing in Illinois? Like in Vermont, right? We got the cultivation, we got the manufacturing, we got the wholesale, we got the testing lab, we got the retail. I'm curious how they've structured those items in your state.
It's very similar. We were supposed to have a testing license. I'm not sure if they're going to release any. We were also supposed to have something called an events license, which I haven't heard anything about for a while.
No shit.
But what we currently have now is transporter license, an infuser's license, craft grow license, or dispensary license. So those are pretty much the only licenses that you can have currently in Illinois. Unless you were already here in medical, then you can have a cultivation license, which is simply just a very, very large craft grow.
So the medical licensees were able to convert their license into another like adult use license.
And pretty much the difference between the craft grow and a large scale industrial grow is that they get 120 to 160,000 square feet. It also comes with its own transporter's license, the ability to manufacture. So, and it also comes with an infuser's license. So that license allows you to do everything yourself.
Right. So you're like vertically integrated there with that license.
Yeah, but that license, in order to run a facility like that, just to buy a 130,000 square foot building, I mean, who has $20-30 million,
That would be, well, True Leave, or something. I was going to say, a facility of that scale would be, like the biggest license issued here in Vermont was 15,000 square feet of indoor, and they're only using like half of that. So it would be, 15, an order of magnitude larger than the biggest grow here in my state.
Well, the craft grows can start at 5,000, then they're allowed to go to 9, and their maximum is 14,000 once they can show that they are requiring that much canopy space. So 14,000 is the maximum for a craft grow, and you are allowed as a company to own up to 3.
And so, do you know how many licenses they've issued currently?
I had the number, but it keeps the number is relative. The number is relative. Are you talking about dispensary or craft grow?
Or both? I don't know. If you have any
dispensary licenses, I believe about 250 have been issued. Out of the 250, I don't know, maybe 190 to 200 are active. No, don't quote me on that. It's somewhere around.
As long as you're in the ballpark, I'm just curious,
Yeah, but you got to realize too, that's also relative to how you perceive things, because a lot of licenses that were issued were never released because they were still currently to this day tied up in litigation. So that number fluctuates depending on your perspective of things. Are you talking about the ones that are currently free and clear of litigation?
Yeah, are people that are operating?
Operating is like it's like maybe 200 current dispensaries operating. That's if you include medical, I believe. But we have the capacity for much more, and a lot of places have opted out.
Cool. I just want to slap a couple comments. This is a syntax here again. Michigan here. The amount of money you need is crazy. The electric bills got to be pretty serious too. And that's another thing. Certainly Vermont, I think from the states I've looked at has some of the highest electric rates in the country. And if you're running an indoor operation like that, that can definitely start to add up.
Yeah, especially when you consider that the alternatives that could save you money cost so much upfront, like solar. It's just a bunch of things that could save you money on your energy bill 7, 8, 10 years down the line. But immediately, there's really nothing that you can do about that.
Well, and how about your surrounding area? I'm guessing there's maybe not a ton of like outdoor space where there's big outdoor farms.
No, that's the thing about Illinois. Unless you're in the CBD, CBG hemp market, currently, I believe there are only 2 cultivators allowed to grow outdoor.
2.
Only 2, and they were grandfathered in the medical. They have the cultivation licenses, so they're allowed to have a greenhouse, and nobody else, to my knowledge, is allowed to do so.
Wow.
Yet at least.
That's wild. See, because basically Vermont tried to go the total other route. They were like, the more small tier outdoor growers we could get, that would be favorable. But I'm sure we have, I don't know what your state looks like, but I know that like out here, there's a lot of farmland and shit like that.
We got a crap ton of farmland. That's not the problem. It's just a lot of farmland is being used to produce corn or just laying barren with no crop being grown on it. A lot of farmland.
And so that's a good transition here, because one of the real challenges I've heard a lot of people talk to me about is finding a location for your business, especially if you're running a dispensary, but also, if you were running an outdoor grow, you got to have land for that. It seems like a lot of this land is being scooped up very quickly.
But you know who?
Yeah, well, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that too, Talvin.
I mean, real estate is going to be real estate. As people in other industries that want to get into the cannabis market, and if you don't have the social equity status to win the licenses, it seems logical to purchase real estate. In places where you believe or your team believes that dispensaries will be a good fit and make a lot of money. I mean, it's a way to get in when it's almost like forcing a partnership,
And I've seen from some of the stuff I've looked at in, New York City, for example, it seems like some of the real estate deals have been very like questionable, man. Like you got to buy a location before you can even operate. And then maybe sometimes some of these people don't even get to open their doors, and they've just been paying rent for a year and a half.
It goes back to what we were first talking about when we first started. What did we say? The legislation. And when these cannabis laws are first written, it's a plan. We might not see the plan, but it's a plan written out. A logical person would know that if you write these laws a certain way, it's going to give an advantage to a certain group and it's going to disadvantage another. 2 and 2 is 4.
Yeah, and it seems like some of those groups have already been disadvantaged in a lot of ways.
That Houdini, it's that magic trick.
I'm here with Talvin White, guys, canAFarm Dispensary. So let's talk. Yeah, that's a lot of like the interesting, sketchy stuff. I'd like to hear really about what your plan is out there and how you plan to navigate all of this nonsense that we just talked about, and what your dream for your business is.
Strength in numbers, man. The way I look at it is this: there's only a few people with the status to win in places who are basing their system off social equity. So it's strength in numbers. The licenses are valuable. The people with money don't want you to believe that they are, because it's in their best interest to drive the price down. But the reality is, in order to expand the businesses, you have to have the licenses. In order to win more licenses, you have to have the status. So if you have enough people with the status who can apply as these positions are open, then you have a little bit more power than they would like to give you.
I gotta scroll down a little. Got a bunch of notes here. I want to ask you about a comment that you said to me. That's just chilling in my notes. It said the little farmers haven't really been able to figure out how to commercialize. Yeah, what do you mean by that?
Brands. What if you want to talk about the CBG market? We got like I got a friend Kelly Burke from Kif Cure. She produces amazing CBG flower, right? But because of the laws, she has to compete with people bringing outside product into Illinois. And if you don't have brands willing to brand out and keep stuff at home, it's kind of hard for the Illinois business to thrive. And a lot of people are so focused on keeping their businesses up that they can't expand the brands. That's why we have so few of them. Branding is how the small guys actually can get a foot up. But unfortunately, they're too busy trying to keep their head above water to focus on bringing in brands to manufacture for, expanding their own brands. They can't worry about that, which is putting them behind.
Very interesting point. And it sounds like you've also like have been working on, your marketing skills and shit like that.
Yeah.
If I read your LinkedIn bio correctly.
Yo, I got a hell of a team. My partner Maja Somanaji from High Haven, she's been showing me a lot, mentoring me. I got a friend named Sandy Cerna from the Grow Side. She's been helping me out. Brad Zerman from 7 Point. I got professionals that have been doing this for a while that have been teaching me certain things that I need to know.
Always important to have a good team. I need one over here.
Definitely.
Right. Some of these notes are a little out of order. Sorry, I'm getting a little echo there, but I wanted to ask you about House Bill 303. That's the next shit on my list.
Yeah, that bill's been updated so many times. I don't even think it's called that no more. They had one called SB 293, and then Senator Ventura had another one. What that was basically a defense for, I don't know how familiar you are with Illinois cannabis laws, but in 2020, right around the time when I had my incident, there was two cases. One was Molina and one was Redmond. And one of them involved the smell of cannabis being probable cause, the burnt, and then one of them was fresh or raw cannabis. Same situation. And what happened was they got arrested, one of them for burnt and one of them for raw cannabis. The cop said he smelt it. And their decision was appealed and won. So it went up to the Supreme Court because it was a deadlock. Two Illinois courts said that, yes, Illinois that the smell of cannabis could not be probable cause. And two of them said that it could be. So the Illinois Supreme Court had to be the tiebreaker. In the meantime, those bills that you were saying were supposed to be something to counteract it. They were going to say that under the legislation that the smell of cannabis could not be considered probable cause. But because they decided to table it and let the courts deal with it, there's really no such thing as those bills anymore.
Yeah. Bummer.
Yeah, I mean, they'll retable them if they had to, but Molina was just, or was it Redmond? I think Redmond was just announced a couple of months ago, a month and a half ago, and he was not guilty. The Illinois Supreme Court said that the smell of burnt cannabis will no longer be probable cause, but they separated the two cases. So now we still have to wait to see if the smell of raw cannabis alone will be not.
Well, it seems like if burnt weed ain't probable cause, that maybe fresh weed also should not. It should follow maybe that.
Common sense is not always common sense,
especially in courts.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, speaking of which, the next note I have is about the DUI laws. And this is something that I talked to you about, and a lot of other people didn't really seem to care about. However, I thought was noteworthy, and I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on, cannabis DUI laws.
It's like I told you earlier, Caleb, that situation that you're referring to is not something that every municipality has to worry about. Police agencies are selective about the laws that they choose to enforce and what reason they choose to enforce them for. So what you're talking about is something that a lot of municipalities, and at least in Lake County, to my knowledge, they don't practice. They don't, unless it's for alcohol, they're not actively trying to determine your toxicity level on cannabis.
Wow, which I found surprising because Vermont is supposed to be this sort of like progressive hippie fucking state, and they're sending cops to drug recognition expert training. So that was
Well, you got
why.
to realize even in the police stations, they have somebody there whose job is to reduce costs and risk. And if their main cash cow once upon a time was arresting people for smelling like cannabis, and now they can't do it anymore because cannabis is legal, then they need to replace their revenue stream. So, what better way? That's my thoughts.
That was my thoughts too. I'm here with Talvin White, guy, canAFarm Dispensary. Yeah, I really want to just know more about the business, but thank you for sharing all the shit, Talvin. These are
That's
the things, you know. I love to hear about everyone's businesses, but I also like to hear about their thoughts on the market. And so let's hang on before I ask you just to tell me all about your business. One question I always ask people is if you could change the legislation in your state, if you say you were the one guy that was in charge of writing the legislation, what
Uh-oh.
what would you change? What would you keep? What would you throw away? I'd be curious how you would do this differently, and maybe you could touch on the delivery stuff. We talked about that a lot too, but your
If
thought
I had my say in legislation currently,
if you were the man,
I
you made
would
every decision.
I would merge the two industries and make everybody that had the hemp or was selling hemp up their regulations and testing. I would allow the Delta 9 market to purchase from their market once those products have been tested. I would allow for, or I would put legislation in there that would make the bigger players actually use some of these transporters that these licenses were given out to. I would also make sure that the craft growers paid a reduced price on their licensing renewal fees. They don't even have money to stand up, so I would make sure their fees were less. And what else? I probably would make the fees less for dispensary owners as well, current dispensary owners that are operating in lower income areas because they're servicing their community, and they can't do that if they're paying these ridiculous fees. So
Yeah,
most of the things I would do would be about reducing the fees for the operator and the consumer.
yeah, especially that 280E tax code is a bitch. It seems like
There's no getting around that. Even if you're the governor, whoever, it don't matter how high you are in the state, there's no getting around that federal law until they can give you all the benefits. They can reduce certain things within the state level, but that 280E, there's no getting around it.
yeah, and it's
At
rough.
least not currently.
Yeah, well, I interviewed a lawyer named Tim Fair right at the beginning, like 2.5 years ago, maybe said that could raise your effective tax rate up to like 65, 70% on a business. And that just sounded outrageous to me.
Yeah, especially when people don't give you the tools on how to offset those crazy deficits.
Mm.
There are certain things in the cannabis industry that are exempt from the 280E rule. There are things that you can file tax deductions on.
Well, in the cultivators, it seems like this mostly goes on to the retailers.
No, it's a lot of things that you can deduct on the craft grow side, equipment, certain things. But
That's what I'm saying. On the grow side, that's cool, but it seems like it hits the retailers the hardest.
it does, especially when those retailers don't have their own brands. This goes back to what I was talking about, like monetizing brands. Brands are 280E exempt, but for a lot of reasons. They got merchandise, they got grinders, they got one hitters, they got T-shirts, they got bags, they got things that are not necessarily operating under that banner that can offset certain deficits.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a cannabis company who somebody funds and gives all these millions of dollars to, and they don't understand these concepts, you see it in the news every other day, right? They dropping like flies.
I've seen a few of them. Even some of the bigger ones, it seems like, are struggling in certain states, which is, a real bummer to see.
Just because you give money to someone, never mind. We ain't gonna go there.
All
Having
right. So,
money and operating wisely and frugally and lean are different things.
all right, Talvin. We got about 20 minutes left. I want you to tell me about your business. Tell me about what you guys are doing. Tell me about, any other concerns you might have about that. But yeah, I'd really like to just spend the last of this just hearing about what your plans are, man.
Yeah, I'm trying to get some of these license holders who don't have proper representation or knowledge or funding actually operational so they don't have to sell their licenses for pennies on the dollar. I'm trying to bring the dispensary to my hometown of North Chicago. We're fundraising right now for our property, our location in Elburn, in Harvard, and North Chicago. We also have 4 other locations, but I'm not at liberty to talk about those right now. But the 3 I'm focusing on now, I'm fundraising for our Elburn, North Chicago, and Harvard. And we got a pretty good team. I got Chris Atkinson and Donna Bracey from Bud Wheat and Flower. As I said before, I got Maja Solmanaji from formerly of High Haven Cannabis. I got Dan Farrell, formerly of Revolution Cannabis. He has a company called Silver Star Security. They do a lot of the transport and security for a lot of the cannabis companies in Illinois. So I got a pretty solid team. We're just in the middle of raising funds to become vertical. We got a lot of pieces we own, a couple pieces of property. We have multiple licenses for each location. So just fundraising right now.
So you can attach multiple licenses to one location out there.
You can put a dispensary license next to your craft grow if your municipality deems that that's okay. You can also cohabitate an infuser with your craft grow. You can put a transport inside of your craft grow or your infuser. So it's levels. You can have a consumption lounge attached to your dispensary.
Oh, you got lounges out there.
Yeah.
Will you tell us about that a little bit, please? Because that's something that's been talked about a lot. I know New York was trying to do it, but we don't have that out here in Vermont.
No consumption lounges?
No.
Well, because of the laws that they wrote, outdoor consumption is perfectly legal in Illinois. As long as you're on a private residence and it's okay with the landowner, you can smoke outdoors. But indoor consumption, you technically have to be okayed by the municipality, and you have to be 9 times out of 10 attached to a dispensary. That's how to get the product. So if you're attached to the dispensary and the municipality has okayed it, and you're not in a banned area, because a lot of places in Cook County, they won't allow it just because that's a municipality rule. But the state will allow it. Yeah, there's one in Island Lake, not too far from me. David Schwimmer owns Emerald Dispensary. There's a nice consumption lounge in there. There was one in Wheeling called OK, and I don't know if that's still open right now, but there's a couple of them here. They're just not a lot.
Well, I had a guy from the Roaring 420s Lounge in New York. His name was John Averill. He came on the show. He said, but there's still some, legalities around it. Anyway, sorry, I wanted to just hear more about your business, but that side stuff does definitely interest me, including the delivery licenses.
It's all about normalization. Until things get more normal in these states, you won't see that in mass amounts.
Yeah, or like farmers markets where like a guy could just go sell direct to consumer. Any thoughts on direct to consumer sales, Talvin?
Only that it's a gray area that you may or may not get busted for in Illinois. Like there are a lot of growers and people who have seed swaps and clone swaps because that's technically not cannabis yet. It's still classified under the Hemp Act as hemp. So you can sell cuts, you can swap CBD flower, you can swap seeds, but you can sell seeds to a certain extent. I don't know really the legality of that, but under the law, I guess it's kind of legal, but not for Delta 9. Anything that the seed to sell in the D9 market, there will be no farmers market. If you don't have a dispensary license, you cannot sell that product.
Yeah, that was a curious one to me.
Until they change the laws, Caleb, I don't really see that ever changing.
I agree with you. Yeah, and I feel the same about the delivery. I had a buddy. I got a sticker up here. My man Tom, the ganja delivery guy. He was trying to start a delivery license here and push it for that, along with some other people at Vermont Normal. And it never got done, which I thought was a bummer because it seems like a real quick and easy way for someone like, if you have a car, you could deliver weed and maybe have a job and make some money.
The insurance and the liability and the chain of custody issues. You know what I mean? It's like who's going to be liable. It's not like DoorDash. These products is cost a hell of a lot more than the ham sandwich. Like, you know what I mean? So medical patients in Illinois can have delivery to a certain extent. If you have a disability or a disability and can't get to a dispensary, your caretaker can purchase for you and then bring it to you. But that's the closest thing that we are seeing to delivery.
I'm here with Talvin White, guys. canAFarm Dispensary out in Illinois. And this has been fascinating, Talvin. Thanks again for being here.
Anytime, Caleb.
Yeah, and I want to go back because I asked you to just like tell us some, the future of your business. And I keep getting hung up because you have so many interesting points to make on all these issues. But I'd really love to know what you guys' plan is there. Maybe, for anyone that's listening.
Make high quality products, Caleb. I'm a medical patient, so I know how the quality is, in the regulated market. So I'm about like natural products with no sprayed on terpenes, no pesticides, actual old school strains with real terpene profiles, actually being able to sell ounces in the dispensary instead of making people buy eighths all the time. I'm trying to do something different to where when you go into a dispensary, you can get high quality product and maybe only pay $25 or $30 for an eighth, not 40, So we'll see. I got big dreams. We'll see how that works out for me, but
yeah. And I got a couple more cool questions here at the end I want to throw in. One of them was that you said you've been working with some colleges out there, Talvin.
Oh yeah. Brandon Smith, not here. Sandy Cerna, Dr. Timmers. The College of DuPage has been great. They got an agricultural program out there and a culinary program out there that's out of this world. And we've been working trying to get some butts in the seats as far as curriculum. They got an awesome area and a beautiful facility, and they have cannabis curriculum. So what we're trying to do is get other colleges who also have similar programs to be able to transfer their course curriculum and accredited courses. So whatever they might not be offering, we could offer, or maybe it's a college that doesn't offer cannabis courses, but they'll take the credits. So we'll accept their students. So we're doing that. We're laying out a curriculum right now, possibly talking about an incubator, just needs some funding, looking for people who are not necessarily in the cannabis industry, who are interested in helping the youth and the actual next generation of workers and cannabis professionals, hemp professionals.
Oh yeah. And it's there was also some notes about the NAACP and the Illinois Black Chamber of Commerce that I'd love to hear about.
Yeah, I'm a member of 3 non-for-profit organizations: the Illinois Black Chamber of Commerce, the great Larry Ivory, and my friend Daryl Bester. I'm with the SCENE organization, Belisha Royster, my sister, and then I am also with the NAACP, the Lake County chapter of the NAACP.
Cool, and I think I got maybe one more. Oh, about these loans you said they were going to give out, these $250,000 loans or something. Would you mind running through that for anybody that might be curious?
Well, for the last couple of rounds, after a dispensary owner or a craft grow owner have been issued a license, maybe a year goes by and then they issue a grant or forgivable loan. It's usually for about $250,000. They give it, or they put out about 70% of the license. Like say there were 100 licenses issued, they would issue 60 forgivable loans or 65 forgivable loans or grants. You apply for them. If you win them and you get the money, then you can use that money towards the operational expenses of the business. If you win it. But you got to wait a year to obtain it, and you have to be operational already to get it.
And I bet $250,000 could kind of go quick.
It could go quick, especially if you are open and operational and a year has gone by. You probably might be in financial trouble, so you get that money, but you can only use it for certain things. It's not like you can use it to pay your employees. Like, you know what I mean?
Oh. Okay, well, that would be nice if you could. Labor costs are a
Yeah.
lot usually.
If they put no stipulations on the money, that would be a different thing, you know.
Okay, so there's some
That's another
strings
thing
attached.
I would change in legislation.
Yeah, it sounds like, yeah, I don't like when they're like, "Here, here's a loan," but there are some conditions.
Yeah, and then if you happen to sell said business to somebody who doesn't have social equity status, then that loan becomes immediately due.
And so I feel like I asked you this earlier, but you said at the beginning all of the licenses in Illinois were social equity licenses. Has that changed since they started issuing licenses?
The only licenses that were not technically social equity licenses were the first round, the medical. Every license that came out after medical was supposed to be for social equity status people.
Hmm.
Loopholes were used. That's why the first round was not, there are not more black and brown owners in larger companies right now.
Well, and I've seen like in Connecticut, the mayor of Stanford's wife got a social equity license. They got a $3 million mansion. It's like, I don't really know if the mayor's wife was really that hurt by the war on drugs.
I mean, if you don't know, you don't know. So a lot of people who got those licenses, who won them, who didn't necessarily have the right status. But you know, the manipulation of the system is paperwork is paperwork. You know.
Just got to get someone who's really good at paperwork, guys. Uh,
Yep. It wouldn't
Talvin,
hurt to know the rules ahead of time.
and I assume that's why a lot of people use a lawyer, because a lot of these lawyers will come out and be like, look, we've done this a bunch of times, and you're going to want someone experienced and knowledge to help you navigate this, you know,
Yeah.
all the hoops.
Yeah. But the problem is that's another business for cannabis. If you're a lawyer and you know how to write these grants and you know these people have social equity status and no money, it'd be very easy for a person to rack up 200, 300 grand worth of fees before they even were able to activate the license. And if they were able to activate the license, those fees would be due eventually. So, you know, it's a no-brainer.
Talvin, I'm gonna slap your logo up here one more time. Talvin White, canAFarm. I want to leave you the last bit here. I'm gonna pull myself back up, guys. I'm your host, Caleb Teskey. I'm here with Talvin White. I always go that way because I forget that the screen is mirrored, but it's Talvin White. Talvin, will you finish this off with just like some uplifting shit? I'm sorry, I get in the weeds with these conversations because you have some great perspectives on issues that I think are very important. And the Neo Spectra thing. That was my last questions. Yeah,
Yeah.
pull that up, and then I'll give you your last minute.
Testing device. Test cannabinoids, flavonoids, CBD, CBG, THC content. Also test certain aspects in psilocybin, vegetables, herbs. The app comes with unlimited tests. So you can pretty much download whichever thing that you're testing, and you queue it up, and it'll test right there within 10 minutes, whatever you're looking for. It tells you the percentages, the content, all of it. Valenveris. Valenveris.
So now will you do your last word? I want to thank you for being here, guys. It's Talvin White, and just one more time, it's a canAFarm dispensary. He's in Illinois. You can find him on LinkedIn. I've posted links on my Instagram as well to where you can find him. So, Talvin, I always leave a word at the end for my guests if there's anything we missed, or like fucking plugs or shout outs you want to do, or just anything at all. Now's
I
the time.
got a couple of shout outs. Shout out to Belisha Royster from the Scene Organization, Chad Lieber, Marcy Allspock, Daryl Bester, Lolita Bonaparte from Market 96, Grasshopper Club, Nobo Cannabis, 7 Point Cannabis. So many people I want to shout out. Matt Rhodes, pretty much anybody else that's helped me along this journey. canAFarm will be trying to open up in North Chicago, Elburn, and Harvard. And I look forward to working at the College of DuPage and getting the college students some curriculum, and we can expand the cannabis program. So that's pretty much what I'm doing. And it's a pleasure talking to you today, Caleb.
Talvin White, thank you so much, man. I'm going to wish you the best of luck in your journey and with all your businesses. And please stick around for a minute after this, guys. That's Talvin White.
Appreciate you, Caleb.
I'm your host, Caleb Teskey. Remember, the devil's in the details, and the details are in the fine print. Peace.